All right. Hopefully this will not be too tiny. All right, so I promised you last class that I would show you pictures of the valves. You don't need to know what they look like, but this is what they look like. You have your picture here. How you put these pictures in your notebook is up to you. Notice, though, that the valves, the pulmonary and aortic valve, those valves have the exact same shape. Okay, what were our other names for those two valves? Do you remember? Bicuspid and tricuspid? Is that right? No, it's not. Yeah. Semi-lunar. That's because supposedly each of these three flaps looks like a part of a moon. Your tricuspid and your mitral, what's the other name for the mitral that is like tricuspid? Bicuspid. So we can see here why bicuspid and tricuspid. What's the easier name for both of those? Not based on structure, but based on location. Yeah, those are the valves in between the atrium and the ventricles. So those are called the right and the left atrioventricular valves. Okay. So this is just there to show you what those valves look like. When we do dissection, you're cutting through them. So there's not really a way to have you open the heart to be able to see the chambers and to see the valves at the same time. You're going to destroy one view over the other. All right, you do not have this picture, but let's look at what's going on. You're looking at the flaps or cusp of the tricuspid valve. We all saw these little stringy things, okay, right? Did anybody not see the stringy things? I feel like when I went around to your hearts, I saw them all. All right, those things are called the chordae tendineae. They're small cord-like tendons, okay? Those are basically the strings that are attached to the heart muscle. It's technically called the papillary muscle. That's not a structure you need to know. But when the papillary muscles, you guys all looked at papillary muscles. Almost every single group asked me what these weird, like they were just like masses of muscle cells. They are technically the papillary muscles. When they contract, that's what's pulling on the chordae tendineae to open the flaps or open the valves. And then when they relax, then the flaps can close. Okay, so I just wanted to give you those visual placements. All right, so the septum, which was the last thing that we labeled on our diagram, the septum is just the muscle that, or the tissue that separates the heart from the left and the right. Okay, so you might want to add that to your diagram. All your blood on your right side of your heart is deoxygenated, which means it says oxygen poor. That's literally the definition, but it's actually no oxygen. What is that blood? What are those red blood cells carrying? Carbon dioxide. Good job, Celia. So blood on the left side is oxygenated. Oxygenated means oxygen rich. It's literally carrying oxygen. It's actually carrying 4 oxygen molecules, because you have 4 hemoglobin groups to carry, each of those carrying an oxygen. The right side of the heart, if you think back to your picture, is less muscular because we talked, it's not going very far. The right side pumps to the lungs, so there's less muscle. So there's less pressure that the blood is under. The left side of the heart is more muscular. There's much, much thicker muscle around the left ventricle because it's going to the whole rest of the body. So the blood is in higher pressure when it's leaving the left ventricle than when it's leaving the right. That's actually when the blood is in its highest pressure, is when it's entering the aorta and leaving the left ventricle. All right. So we're going to talk about how the blood moves through the heart. So the blood is pumped around the body by the heart. Takes actually only about 30 seconds for the blood to go once around the body. 30 seconds. That's crazy. Starting with the left side of the heart, which route does the blood follow to complete one circuit of the body? So the first thing it's going to do, so we're going to talk about the blood leaving the heart. It goes from the heart through the aorta to the body cells. So the left side of the heart, blood. You're good. Oxygen-rich blood to the rest of the body. This blood supplies the body cells with oxygen. But then it's going to drop off the oxygen and pick up another gas. The other gas it picks up is the carbon dioxide from the body's cells. What process are those cells doing to make carbon dioxide? Cellular respiration. This oxygen poor blood, not oxygen poor, and no oxygen, travels back to the right side of the heart. It needs to lose the carbon dioxide and pick up more oxygen. So now it's going to go to the lungs. This animation is like awful, sorry. So the right side of the heart is going to pump these red blood cells that are carrying carbon dioxide to the lungs. In the lungs, the blood gets rid of the waste carbon dioxide and collects more oxygen. This is happening because of concentration gradients. What do your lungs do with carbon dioxide when they get it? What? Yeah, we breathe it out. So does carbon dioxide stay in your lungs? No. So when a red blood cell comes up to your little lung tissue and it's carrying carbon dioxide, your concentration gradient of carbon dioxide is high in your red blood cell and low in your lungs. So that's going to make it move out. What do our lungs take in from the atmosphere? Oxygen. So the oxygen stays in your lungs until empty red blood cells come up, release their carbon dioxide through diffusion, and then your concentration gradient is in the opposite direction for your oxygen. So you have a high concentration in your lung cells, and no concentration or low in your red blood cells. So that's going to allow it to move into your red blood cells. So then the oxygen-rich blood is going to return to the left side of the heart, and this will complete the blood's journey around the body. So this is the way your blood flows throughout your body. This is a closed double circuit. Why is it a double circuit? Yeah, because you've got to go to and from the lungs and to and from the body. All right, so during one complete circuit of the body, it passes through the heart twice. The heart has two jobs to do, so the circulatory system involves a double circulation. So it's not just closed system, but it's a double system. All right, your heart muscle tissue. What are these things on the outside of our heart? Veins and arteries. Your heart is full of blood, but it is made of tissue. So it needs its own blood supply to make sure that our muscle tissue and our muscle cells can keep pumping. We need to make sure that the muscle cells are getting the oxygen as well, and that the carbon dioxide is able to leave the muscle tissue. So we have blood vessels on the outside of the heart that carry oxygen-rich blood to the heart muscles, and then our carbon dioxide is carried away from these cells by outer blood vessels and back into the heart. What was the name that I gave those last class for your artery in particular? Anybody remember? It's not on your labeling diagram. What's another name for your heart besides cardiac? It's another sciencey name. Huh? I feel like I heard it whispered. Coronary. Your coronary artery is the main artery that supplies your heart tissue, your cardiac tissue, with oxygen. All right. So all the parts on either side of the heart work together in a repeated sequence. The two atria contract and relax at the same time. And then the two ventricles contract and relax at the same time. This is how the blood moves to the heart and is pumped to the lungs and to the body at the same time. So one complete sequence of contraction and relaxation of both the atria and the ventricles is called your heartbeat. So it's two contractions to make up one heartbeat. All right, there is a picture. There we go. When the heart muscles are relaxed, that's called diastole, okay, or your diastolic pressure. This is when blood flows from the veins into the atria. So it's coming from the body or from the lungs into the left and right atria. When the heart muscles contract, that's called systole. The atria contract first to pump the blood into the ventricles. It's not really a pumping, but it is a contraction and an opening and closing. Why is it not really a pumping? Structure of the heart. Where are the atria located related to the heart?
It doesn't really expand because they're like there and it's really just opening to allow it in.
Right, and it's being able to just open and allow it in. Doesn't really need to push it because atria are on top of ventricles, so gravity does a lot of that work, okay? But there is a little bit of pushing because you're not always upright, right? So you got to make sure no matter what position we're in, if we're hanging upside down, we're laying in bed sleeping, that our blood can still move from our atria to our ventricles. Then the ventricles will contract to pump the blood into the arteries. This contraction is also going to force the atrioventricular valves to shut. All right, if you're getting your blood pressure taken, you get two numbers, your systolic number and your diastolic number. Contraction is your systolic number, so that's going to be a higher number. A normal, healthy high number is 120, okay? It's a pressure number from contraction. Your diastolic number or diastolic pressure is when your heart muscles are relaxed, so there's less pressure. That should be a lower number. 120 over 80 are good numbers. Good numbers, okay? Higher on either end, not good. Okay, and you may need to be on medicine. People may need to be on medicine, doing more cardiovascular exercise, just moving more. All right, you have this image. I want you to take a moment to look at it, to pause, to digest it. There's a lot of stuff going on, but this is a breakdown of exactly what's going on based on what we just went over on the last slide. All right, so first I want to look at the two bars at the top, the atria and the ventricles. So what did we say on the last slide is happening when we're in systole? Are we contracting? Oh, Jesus. All right, so when we're looking at this diagram, we first want to look at the top two lines, the bars for what's going on over time in the atria and the ventricles. So you have two different colors here. You have systole in like a purple and diastole in a green. So what's happening? Which one of those is contraction and which one of those is relaxation? Yeah, systole is contraction and diastole is relaxation. So you'll notice that if you look at the bars, there's one giant systole period, but it is a little bit of the atria contraction and then a lot of the ventricles contracting. Why do the ventricles need to contract over a longer period of time?
More to fill up and more to like process.
Well, their ventricles are pumping the blood where? Out of the heart, right? So they're going to need to pump. It's going to take a longer time for them to contract and get that pressure up. What are our units on our graph, our pressure graph here at the bottom on the x-axis? Yeah, milliseconds. How many seconds is that going to be?
Like 0.1.
It's going to be 60 seconds. So this is over 1 minute. Okay. So this graph is over 1 minute. If we're looking at the valves, it says your AV valve and your aortic valve, but they're really in pairs, right? So with the AV valve line is really your atrioventricular valves on both the right and the left side. Okay. And they are at the beginning of this, they're going to open. As they open, if you look back up to the atria, so in this blue area where your AV valves are open, you don't have that contraction that full time period that they're open. Okay, it's just it's like 2/3 of that time. And then they're going to be closed and then they're going to open again to let the blood flow through. Your aortic valve is that line is really representing your pulmonary and aortic valve. Okay, so the valves that go to the pulmonary trunk and to the aorta. And so those are open and closed in opposite periods of time. So when you're getting your blood pressure taken, your systole is when your atria is contracting and then all the way through your ventricles contracting. But if we look down here at the very bottom line, this is what your heartbeat sounds like. Your heart sounds, okay? And there's a lub and a dub. Lub, dub, lub, dub, lub, dub. Okay, that's what your heartbeat sounds like. Those sounds are the sounds of the valves closing. So your lub is your AV valves closing, and your dub is your pulmonary, your semilunar valves closing, your pulmonary valve and your aortic valve. So that's what you need to take away from this picture. How things relate, you need to understand systole and diastole, or systolic pressure versus diastolic pressure, okay? And then you need to understand what's causing those two sounds of your heartbeat. All right, what questions do you have about that one? We okay with that? Looks a little scary when you first start, but if you break it down, it's really not that bad. And it's got a little bit of extra information on there. All right. How does the heart know what to do? So the beating of the heart is due to muscle contraction, but it's called myogenic muscle contraction. So myogenic, your muscle cells are called myocytes, all right? And the myocyte is the origin of the contraction, and it's not controlled externally. Remember, your heartbeat is not an external control. You have a special region of muscle cells or myocytes called the SA node or sinoatrial node. This area of these special myocytes is also referred to as the pacemaker because this is the area where the nerves send a wave of excitations to the node, and then the node causes the atria to contract. So that excitement from the SA node is then conducted to the AV node, which is what is going to stimulate the ventricles, the atrioventricular node. So the nodes are just where the nerves connect to the muscles, and they connect in two places of the heart, the SA node or sinoatrial node and the AV node or atrioventricular node. And those two areas are where the stimulation occurs to cause the atria to contract and then to cause the ventricles to contract. All right, and then Fletcher, I just want to point out to you the AV node and its location in particular, because you were working with Ben during that dissection, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so they had on one of their areas of heart, it was really kind of soft and kind of dimpled in. I don't know for sure that was the AV node, but it was in about the right place for it. So that could be very well where that node was located. It kind of looked like that. Yeah. All right. And I think that might be all we have for today. No veins. That's right. All right. So here's our structure, and you've got these two pictures at the bottom. The upper pictures are what are full longitudinal cross sections versus I can't think of the other word. That's not longitudinal, but maybe I don't know. I can't even process right now. All right, so if you look at the two though, with the figures at the bottom, you can clearly see the thickness difference between arteries and veins, and you can see how there's different layers. The only other difference that you can't see in these two pictures that are going to go in your notebook is that veins have valves. Arteries do not have valves. Veins have valves to prevent backflow of the blood. So those valves, because veins are not as strong, they don't have as much pressure. That's why they don't need to be as strong. They have to have valves to make sure that the blood doesn't go in the wrong direction. We need to keep it moving in the right direction. If you've ever seen someone, typically older women, who have varicose veins, particularly ones that kind of like bulge out, often on the legs, okay? That is from where the valves have blown, okay? So the vein still works, but they have less control of the blood moving in the right direction. Also, so I had that down my right calf, starting when I was 14. And I actually had surgery to have that section of my vein closed off. And I learned from my surgeon, my vascular surgeon, I didn't know this, I've never even seen it in studying, everybody's venous pattern is completely different. It's like the same, but it can vary. So in my right leg, you have a femoral vein, which runs down your inner thigh, and then it branches at your knee. Mine branches way higher. Mine branches much closer to my pelvis than it does to the knee. And so I've got a whole different pattern of veins in my leg. It's kind of weird. But your veins, if you have damage to a vein, your veins can kind of branch off and grow new structures, whereas your arteries don't do that.
They slightly affect your nerve cells.
Yes.
Because they caught one of mine in surgery, and so I have no nerve cells They're aware on my left side. They're like inside part.
Yeah. That's crazy. All right, so the importance of the thickness of the arteries is that your arteries all are highly pressurized. So we need our arteries to be thick. Our arterial walls need to be thick so that our blood stays contained with that pressure. All right, so all arteries carry blood away from the heart. Except for the pulmonary artery, they all transport oxygenated blood. They're thick and elastic, so they can stretch under the high pressure of the blood. Veins carry blood to the heart, except for the pulmonary vein. They all carry deoxygenated blood. They are wider than arteries, but they have thinner walls. If you look at your picture for your notebook, also the picture here at the bottom of the slide, we call that opening on the inside of the vessel the lumen. So you can see that there is a wider lumen in your veins than there is in the arteries. This is because your blood is under lower pressure, so we don't need those thick walls. And like I said earlier, your valves prevent the backflow of blood. Capillaries. Capillaries are tiny, tiny blood vessels that carry the blood supply to and from the body cells. So capillaries are going to connect arteries to tissues, and you're going to have a capillary network, as you can see here in this picture. So your tissue would be in the middle where your capillaries are, and your capillaries would be able to do diffusion to those tissue cells and then travel. Remember, we're in a closed system, so we're going to stay in it's kind of like, have you guys ever been has Mr. Smith ever gotten the coffee from the coffee cart? Have you ever been in a class that's gotten the coffee from the coffee cart? Okay, cool. So like you can think of the coffee cart as like the red blood cells, okay? And the classroom is the tissue. The coffee cart's going to come up, they're going to drop off the coffee, and then they're going to go away. They're going to stay in the halls. So the halls would be our vessels. All right, so capillaries are the only blood vessels where substances can be exchanged between the body and the blood cells. That's why it's really, really important that they're only one cell thick so that they can perform diffusion for all of their material exchanging. All right, I am going to post this. I would say if we hadn't had the fire drill, I was going to have you draw this. But I will post this so that you can print it if you want. It's a really good chart comparing the two. I will tell you on the wall layers row, you only need to know the layers. You do not need to know, for me, what their names are, okay? So you don't need to take a picture of this now or later. All right, really quick in the last couple minutes, 4, 5, 6 minutes. The liquid part of the circulatory system is the blood. Blood cells are suspended in plasma. An adult human has about 5.5 liters of blood in their body at any time. There's 4 components. 55% is your plasma. Less than 1%, way less. 0.09 is your white blood cells. White blood cells and platelets combined even. White blood cells are also called leukocytes. Okay? Leuko is white. Cytes is cells. Erythrocytes are your red blood cells. So most of your blood is plasma and red blood cells. All right. Blood plasma carries 3 types of blood cells. They have different shapes and carry out different functions. Here you have your red blood cell, which has a disc shape. Your white blood cells, which are like funky. They don't have a regular shape. And then you have your platelets. They're not full cells, but they are cell parts. There are a lot of proteins. Here's what they actually look like under a scanning electron micrograph. So you have your white blood cell is the big blob. Your platelets are the little pieces kind of floating around, and then your red blood cells. What is transported by the blood? You have many things. Nutrients is transported, your oxygen, your carbon dioxide, all of your hormones, your antibodies. What the world is urea? Urine. So urea is a is the waste that goes out in your urine. So it's your nitrogen that you're trying to get rid of. And we also transport heat. All right, that's it.